Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I gotta tell you, I was taking a walk with my boys around a little park the other day, and there were a bunch of anglers fishing offshore. And I've got a bad habit of every time I walk by somebody that's fishing, I like to ask them how it's going. And I was walking around this pond, and the first three or four people I talked to, who were all fishing traditional bass gear, one guy was throwing a topwater, one guy was throwing a chatterbait, one guy was throwing a like some form of a crankbait, and they all said it was very tough. One of the guys said he had caught one bass that day. The other three guys had not caught anything. I don't know how long they were there. It's a small pond. You can pretty much walk around the whole thing and fish it, but nobody was having any luck. I came up to another guy and I asked him, he said he was catching a bunch of fish. And you know what he was throwing, guys? Out of all the baits out there, this is something I've talked about. During the post spawn, there is a time window where it's really hard to beat these little baits. And he specifically was throwing an inline spinner. He was throwing a little Meps. This is the bronze slammer, but he was throwing one that was a little bit smaller than this specific one. But I've talked about it before on this show that there is a period during the post spawn early summer where your small spinner style baits are going to dominate. And I've talked about how the first really eye opening experience for me about this post spawn pattern had to do with a Red River FLW tour event I was fishing, where I was fishing a backwater with another competitor who was throwing a tiny little 1/8 ounce buzz bait. This one specifically, a little mini Pro Buzz Strike King buzz bait. And he was putting on a clinic around me and three other anglers who were fishing, who we were flipping some of the lay down trees and the stumps that were in this little tiny backwater. And he was out fishing us like 4 or 5 to 1. He finished in the top 10. The rest of us didn't cash checks. And it was an embarrassing experience, but eye opening because there's something about little spinner style baits during the post spawn. So whether you're talking about a little buzz bait, a little MEP spinner, now this I would include the little chatterbait micro in with that, or a little, your little small spinner baits like this Booyah 3/16 ouncer. These are all micro baits that do a phenomenal job at mimicking not only what a lot of the forage is during the post spawn period, so you start having some small minnows that are swimming around, but you also really do a good job at mimicking the fry that the bass are guarding. So a lot of times what happens when you have a buzz bait or a small inline spinner or a small spinner bait with little blades, they mimic the fry that the bass are guarding. And therefore, anything that comes through that area looks as if it's challenging to eat that fry. So when you've got the fry, which are tiny little minnows at this point, scattering, the bass think that these are feeding on those fry. When they hear the buzzbait come by, the buzzbait creates that same sputtering sound that's almost like fry scattering around the surface. So to me, if you're fishing during this post-spawn period and the fishing is difficult, you really might want to pick up one of these small, moving spinner bait, chatterbait, inline spinner, buzzbait baits, because they all kind of fall in the same category. They're all producing flash. They've all got kind of that skirt material. They're compact designs that just do a great job it being one of the forage species that the bass are going to key in on because they are small, they're an easy meal, and at the same time, the bass a lot of times will hit them because they think that they're, challenging the fry that the bass are guarding. So I don't know anything more than that in terms of why there is this window. There's like a 1 month window, and I've seen it from the Red River down in Louisiana all the way up to upper Wisconsin. It is something that happens across the board. And I'll tell you this, you think fishing's really tough, and then you pick up one of these little baits, and all of a sudden it's like you're catching fish left and right. A lot of them are smaller, but you still mix in that big one every once in a while. So it's something you really want to keep your eyes on. Um, Man, I just don't know exactly what it is, but I do think it also has to do with the fact that the bass are done guarding. The bass are starting to concentrate on eating again, and they think these are good, easy meals versus, say, a traditional big spinner bait that's coming by. This little thing is just like a simple little minnow swimming by that they cannot refuse. I think there's also something to be said that, a lot of times if you're in an area that has shad, the shad are starting to spawn. And when you're talking about baits that are creating a little bit of commotion, like a small threadfin shad that's spawning, these all do a very good job at mimicking them. But if you're struggling right now, and it's pretty much across the country during this window, if you're struggling, you really might want to pick up a small bronze slammer, a small mini pro buzz, a small micro chatterbait, or a small, this is the Pond Magic spinnerbait, I think is what they call it. Yeah, the little Pond Magic spinnerbait by Booyah, because they will generate bites when a lot of other baits aren't. It's a small window where they excel better than almost anything else. They work great year round. They catch a pile of fish year round. But man, it's a little window right now where I feel like it's happening. And it made me chuckle when I was walking around that pond. I see guys throwing traditional bass gear, and I get to this older man who's throwing a little Mep spinner, and he was going to town on them, and everyone else thought it was really tough fishing. And it just made me chuckle because I'm like, I've seen that before. I have experienced that before, and the old man had it figured out. So kudos to him. Guys, if you haven't tried any of these baits, I say check them out. I'll put links. I think they're at Tackle Warehouse. I actually don't know if they all are there, but I will put links to Tackle Warehouse so you can support the channel if you do want to purchase one of these. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscriber button. It's another good way to support the channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned.